Good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining. This is going to be a wealth of information. Like Julia said, use the chat window. I will try to get to all the questions. I do have breaks where I'll stop, and you can either use the raise the hand or take yourself off mute, or like I said, we will answer those that we put in chat. My name is Meredith Schwartz. I am the Purchasing Officer Director for DOA, the Department of Administration. The Department of Administration is a very unique department within the state cabinet agencies. We buy lots of different things. We have a diverse group of agencies and divisions that we support. So with that, we go through lots of different types of purchases, lots of different types of contracts for goods and services, and things like that. So some of the groups that we help, we have our advocacy groups, which includes the Hub Office, which is the Office of Historically Underutilized Businesses. And I know that we have Carla Cooks on the line. She is from the Hub Office. We're going to briefly go through how to become a Hub vendor, but use that to your advantage. The Hub Office supports any small business, or actually any business that falls into the category of a minority, women-owned, or disabled-owned businesses. And so when the Hub Office needs to buy something, we work directly with the Hub Office to not only ensure that there's inclusion in procurement, but also work directly with them to provide lots of training and things for our Hub vendors, such as this presentation. The other advocacy groups we have under DOA is Council for Indian Affairs, Non-Public Ed, that sits up and does all of the, looks out for all of our homeschools within the state, and then Women and Youth Advocacy, including domestic violence survivors and human trafficking. We also manage asset management for the state. So that includes facility management. We do all of the maintenance and repairs and constant services for the buildings in the downtown complex. So that includes all of the state buildings, museums, the Capitol building, all the office space that is owned by the state. We also have state construction under DOA. They manage all of the construction projects. We'll go over when we go over the rules and the laws of how the state exercises their taxpayer dollars. You'll see that state construction has a different set of processes and procedures to actually complete construction projects. But we'll show you where to find those rules and those procedures. We have state parking. We manage multiple parking facilities within the downtown complex. And state property, like I said, facility management takes care of all the maintenance. State property manages our portfolio of all the state property for the state. State services, we have Mail Service Center that manages all the mail for the state as well as outgoing states. So Mail Service Center, if you think of your DMV sticker that comes when you do your registration, that goes through the Mail Service Center. Motor fleet, we buy all the vehicles for the state, including highway patrol vehicles and all of the motor fleet that the state owns. Purchasing contracts, you're going to hear me talk a lot about them today. They are the governing agency for goods and services purchases, and they are one of our divisions at DOA. So they write the rules and the procedures that outline how those taxpayer dollars are spent. Then we have state and federal surplus property. Just know that they are located off of Chapel Hill Road. They handle all of the asset management for our used equipment, vehicles, services. They are located off of Chapel Hill Road. If you are setting up a new business, you can go out there and buy desks or vehicles or anything. They manage and sell all of our used property. It's open to the public. The other departments, we consider ourselves the land of the misfit toys, where we have a couple of extra departments that we do services for, which includes the governor's office and OSBM, State Human Resources, Lieutenant Governor's Office, and Military and Veteran Affairs. So with all these different agencies, we have a lot of different things that we buy for them. Everybody needs office supplies. Everybody needs certain services for consultant service and things like that. But we also have nitty gritty to where we're buying vehicles for motor fleet and things like that. So we're very diverse in what we buy and how we buy. And today we're going to learn what those processes and procedures are. So we talk about how those tax dollars are spent. It is written into law how our tax dollars are spent within the state. So we have standard goods and services. Those are just standard things. Goods, of course, tangible property that we have to buy, those vehicles, office supplies, things like that. Services could be considered landscaping services down to consultant service. Any kind of service could also include plumbing or anything like that, where a vendor comes in, has that specialized knowledge, and does that service for us. The general statutes written by the North Carolina legislature that guide those types of purchases is Chapter 143, Article 3, and then we have an administrative code, which is Title I, Chapter 5. If we're buying something that involves data, so if we're buying IT-related services or goods, so hardware, software, IT staffing, things like that, those purchases are guided under a different set of general statutes, Chapter 147, the Administrative Code, Title IX, and Chapter 6. And then we have state construction. So state construction has its own set of rules. This is where we are actually either building a property or we are renovating a property where we have an alteration of the physical property. So something that has to go through design review is under a different set of general statutes, and they have their own set of processes. With that, today, this presentation, you're going to really learn the rules and laws that guide either standard goods and services or information technology purchases. So what we're going to learn about is our systems that we use, our state term contracts, which are contracts written that all agencies within the state can use. That includes all universities, community colleges, state agencies, as well as municipalities and public and charter schools, and then even some towns, some local towns, all can use our state term contracts, and all kind of can use our these processes and procedures for seeking that competition, where you can find their bid opportunities. All applies to those different entities. We're going to talk about where we seek competition. We're going to give you some proposal tips. So if you are responding to an IFB or an RFP or bid, how to make sure that your bid rises to the top. We're going to go over the award process. So what happens if you are awarded the contract, and then some management tips and tricks on the back end of that contract to ensure that it's a successful contract. We're going to talk about performance and making sure once you have that contract, what to look for and how that will be graded. And then payment process, we all want to get you paid. So making sure that invoices are submitted correctly. And then at the end of the contract, what happens, and to make sure that those processes are completed. So first comes first is to register with the state, to be a registered North Carolina vendor. We have what is called our electronic vendor portal. The website there is edp.nc.gov. If you are not already registered to be a North Carolina vendor, I highly suggest that you do. It is a one-stop shop registration to receive purchase orders from state entities, to search for our formal solicitations, to receive automatic notices when something is posted under the commodity codes you've registered for. It also now includes our hub certification. So if you do identify as a woman, minority-owned, disabled-owned business, that registration to become a certified hub vendor is all within this same system. It also includes a vendor search. So that is what the state agencies look through to find vendors to meet their opportunities. It is an open website, so you could also search through our vendor search if you're looking to be a subcontractor on something. And you could always reach out to a prime and say, hey, I see this opportunity is out there. Do we want to go together and bid on that? It does also allow you to view who has bid. So once a bid is closed, we post the tabulations of who has bid. And then once awarded, the award is also posted out there. So the award as well as the bid tabulations, once it's finally awarded, we update that tabulations with all the bidding pricing. So it is a transparent posting place to be able to see all things state procurement. It is an automated business opportunity notifications. It allows you to keep your information updated as well as select the correct commodity codes for the services or goods that you provide. And then it automatically notifies you when we go to post an opportunity under those codes. When you're registering, like I said, it's an online portal. That's the link for it. You click register now. If you have any problems registering to do business with the state in the EVP portal, we have a help desk that is there to help you with that registration. They are available 7:30 to 5:30, Monday through Friday, and that's their phone number and their email. I believe, Julia, you will also provide them with this presentation for anybody on this call so that they will be able to have those links and things. So when you are in EVP, this is kind of what that website looks like on the main page. Just to call out a couple of things, this is where you register here. And once it is free to register. It also allows you to finish your hub registration or your small business enterprise program registration is all within the same site. There you can log in, but you don't have to be logged in to be able to browse our solicitations. So that is how you would click here to see what all opportunities are out there for all state agencies. So the universities, community colleges, state agencies, local municipalities, all of them are posted on this browse solicitation. When you get into that, you can narrow your search. You can search by entity, you can search by keyword, you can search by those commodities and be able to see what exactly you're looking for. This is our vendor portal where we can search for vendors to get quotes from or to, if we're looking for a vendor to do a certain project. And like I said, this is open website. You can also use our vendor search to be able to look for those primes if you are a subcontractor. So we talk about registering, we talk about the commodity codes. We use the United Nations Standard Products and Services Codes, the UNSPSC codes. They are standard across the world, global codes that allow us to have a hierarchical convention on how to classify those products and services. Know that those are 8-digit codes that are the UNSPC codes. In our systems, we are only using the first 6 digits. So if you are looking for things that you do, know that services start with a 7, 8, or 9 commodity code. There is a searchable list within EVP, as well as there's a website for the UNSPSC.org, where you can search those codes and really pick the ones that are related to what you do. That is part of your registration, and like I said, that will guide those automatic notices through EVP when an opportunity is posted under that commodity code in which the vendor is registered for. It also allows us to search for vendors by that commodity code to reach out for our small purchases. So the codes are very important to look through and really pick the ones that are related to what you do. In 2020, EVP updated. So if you were already a registered vendor with the state before 2020, you are automatically transitioned to our new codes. If you haven't logged in since then, it would behoove you to make sure that you check those codes that were crosswalked over and make sure that they're still relevant if that happened before 2020. E-procurement is our purchasing system. It is linked to EVP. So e-procurement is our electronic ordering system. It allows us to do procurement electronically. It is linked to EVP, so it allows us to send purchase orders directly to vendors that are registered. It provides a single point of access to all government organizations. So all of our other entities use this system, find our vendors. It links them that they can then issue purchase orders. And it allows us for increased order accuracy through receipts of those electronic orders. And because the vendors can keep their information up to date in EVP, it then makes sure that the purchase orders go to the correct individuals electronic via email. It's also where our state term contracts have uploaded searchable catalogs where we can, when we're putting in a requisition to buy something, it can link directly to our state term contract vendor's website. And basically we fill a cart just like you're buying off of Amazon, and then it fills that requisition to be sent directly to the registered vendor. Vendors are charged a 1.75 fee on goods only, and that fee is used to pay for the ongoing maintenance and support of our systems. It's only on goods only, so just know if you're ever providing a quote or providing a proposal or a bid, and you are providing a good, know that it could be charged that 1.75 fee for the good. Shipping is a service. So always when you're providing your quote that you take shipping out, and that will be assessed under a different commodity code that would not then be charged that 1.75 fee. There is vendor training for all of these different systems, including EVP and e-procurement, can all be found on our e-procurement website. So there's job aids, and we have our help desk that is an actual person that you can talk to help you. But we also have a lot of videos and job aids that can walk you through the steps of e-procurement and EVP. You heard me talk briefly about state term contracts. These are contracts that are state procurement, so that purchase and contract division, that is a division of DOA, as well as Department of Information Technology. So those IT purchases has a statewide office that writes contracts for all the different entities to be able to use. Those are there for commonly purchased goods and services for all divisions. So we have them for office supplies, vehicles, IT staffing, our hardware, printers, things like that. They have some that are mandatory for state agencies to use. Then there are some that are convenience that we could use them. There's a searchable list of both PNC and DIT's website of their state term contract list of their contracts. They go out for bid just like any other department's contracts go out for bid. So you could have the opportunity to get on a state term contract. On that list that's posted on their websites is the contract manager for each one of those contracts. So if you have a question about how do I get on a state term contract, contact that manager directly and say, hey, when does this expire? When is it going back out for bid? Can I get on this contract? What's needed? We use those state term contracts because it provides us lower prices, good quality products, and shorter delivery times because the whole state can use it. So hopefully we get discounts on that due to usage. Statewide procurement follows that standard bidding process for state term contracts as well. So some different types of documents that we use when we're reaching out to the vendor community. So those state term contracts, maybe we don't have something on that state term contract that we need to buy. So we have to go out into the vendor community. So this is where me at DOA, if I have something that motor fleet needs, I'm going to have to go through a bid process for motor fleet. If it is something that's under $29,000, which is our small purchase threshold, we can go directly to a vendor and say, provide me a quote. It has to be less than 30 days, and the vendors on the vendor's letterhead are branded. But we just simply get one quote at DOA. We require that quote be from a hub vendor in an effort to meet our hub efforts. But get that one quote, we issue a purchase order. We're not creating a contract. It's just simply a purchase order is issued against that quote. That's all sent via email back and forth. The request for the quote is then sent to the vendor, to the agency, and the agency submits a requisition. We cut a PO, it's done. For anything that is over that $29,000 is where we start getting into the contract world. So we use a document called an RFQ, which is used for competition up to 50 grand, where we're still going out and getting our quotes to fill that need, but we're getting the vendor under contract. So this contract is directly sent to the vendor, again, via email, but the vendor is agreeing to our terms and conditions. It's also used if we're able to justify a waiver of competition. So where we had proprietary software, or we had, this is the only vendor that can do this work, they're a sole source. Things like that. So we justify those waivers, and then we use this document to get the vendor under contract for those goods or services. The next type of document that we have is an invitation for bid. The invitation for bids are posted out there on that EVP site. It's used for things that we anticipate to be over 50 grand. It's used for well-defined goods and services. So we know exactly what we need from you. We just want you to tell us how much is it going to cost. So bids will be evaluated, and the award will be based on the lowest responsive bid that meets requirements. So there could be specifications that it has to be this size or whatnot, but as long as it meets the requirements and the vendor offers the lowest cost, that is what the award is based on. A request for proposal is also posted to EVP, and it is for things estimated being over 50 grand, but it's where we can evaluate those bids that come on, and we can evaluate things other than just cost to make the award. Whatever they are planning on evaluating on will be listed in that document that is posted on EVP of what they're looking for to be able to make that award. So we talk about submitting a proposal, just some things to look for in those different solicitations that are out there or that you receive via email. Just know that there could be a required signature, and that signature is saying that you understand and you agree to all the terms and conditions of that document. Look for the words shall, must, or mandatory. There could be things that you have to submit with your bid. There could be mandatory site visits, things like that, that you have to attend in order to meet the requirements to get your bid considered. There is a schedule in there with dates. Be aware of when things are due. There is always a question and answer period. Make sure if you have questions that you get those in by those dates. Look out for site visits. We have two different types of site visits. It could be mandatory. So when the bids come back, one of the first things we look at is if there was a mandatory site visit, did that vendor attend? Not necessarily that individual, but did somebody from that firm attend that mandatory site visit? We could have an urged and caution. That is not a requirement to be able to bid, but maybe you want to attend that urged and caution so you can really learn what the expectations, objectives, and goals are for that particular procurement. And then it'll also include in that solicitation document where to submit your bid. Most agencies for formal bids and even those RFQs for those small bids are coming through the Ariba sourcing tool. So that is linked to EVP. When you're in EVP, you say, I intend to bid. It'll send you the link to then be able to upload your bid. So it's all linked in EVP when you're browsing those solicitations. But look out in the document of how to submit and when to submit those proposals. Know that if it's after that deadline, the system will not let you upload. So those dates for submittal are hard and are firm dates that you cannot submit your bid after those dates and times. There's always a question and answer period. If you learned nothing else today, use that question and answer period. Everything in state procurement is public record. So you can ask questions about that particular bid, about that particular project. You can ask, who's currently doing this work? How much are you currently paying? You can ask, I don't know what you're looking for vendor experience. How can I make my experience be what you're looking for? We will compile all those questions and post all the answers. We do have to answer all the questions that we get. So be on the lookout for those postings of addendums, which could include the answers to those questions. If you see requirements through these specifications, requirements are those specifications that a vendor must meet or submit with its proposal to be found responsive. So if you have to submit a manual with your response for this good, make sure that it's in there. If it's not in there, it's automatically rejected. Or if you have to submit a general contractor's license, that's one of those things that's a hard pass, yes or no, it was in there. Evaluation criteria are those things in RFPs where we're looking at different criteria and we're going to evaluate what the vendor submits in accordance with that criteria to then base our award. Normally the three biggies are, what is your past experience with this project or these services? Who's doing the work? What are their qualifications? And then how are you planning on meeting our objectives for this? What is your technical approach? Does that include a timeline and things like that? Just be mindful of whatever you're responding to this evaluation criteria. The best advice I can give is that you relate your experience to what they're asking you to do in the scope of work of that solicitation. So if this solicitation is for power washing and we're asking you to rappel off the side of the building and power wash 14-story buildings, and your experience has been power washing driveways, they're going to be able to say that's not of the same size and scope as to what we're asking them to do. So you would be negatively evaluated for that. However, if you're able to say, I haven't done it for the state, but I've done it for the airport or I've done it downtown for the Wells Fargo building and I've had to rappel off of that. That would be of the same size and scope. So you would list out, this is the square footage that we've done. This is how many stories that we've done, things like that, to be able to relate to what we're asking you to do. Same thing with your staffing. If your staff that's planning on completing the work has that experience, even if it's outside of your current firm, add that so that you will rise up to the top that says, yes, this is relatable to what we're asking you to do. Just know if there's an IT project posted for bid that we might be asking for a VRAR, which is a Vendor Readiness Assessment Report or a SOC 2 assessment. And that's really so that we know that if you are receiving state data, that it's stored in a place that meets our security protocols. So that's what that's for. It will be within the solicitation if that's required. It's a link to be able to download that readiness assessment report, fill it out, and upload it with your response. We'll stop there. I know that was a lot of information, and see if Julia's got any questions in the chat for me.
Not so far. Looks like everybody's following along.
Okay. Do we have anybody that wants to come off mute? I don't know if you can on the way we set this up, or raise their hand. Do regular services
We do have
get
okay. We have a question now. Do regular services get reviewed and put out for bid?
Yes. So regular services, depending on that dollar amount. So if it's over $29,000, it will be, we'll look for vendors based on the commodity code in EVP in our vendor portal and reach out directly. If it's under $29,000, same thing. We look in our vendor pool, reach out directly and just ask for a quote. But if it's over 29, we get several quotes and then get you under contract from those quotes. And if it's over 50, then it would go out for bid out on EVP. So depending, when you say simple services, I'm thinking landscaping, janitorial, things like that. It would be posted on an IFB, an invitation for bid document, where it spells out, here's the scope of work that you will be held to if awarded, and here's what we need back from you to be able to submit your bid.
And as a reminder, we will be sending out a link to the presentation. So if you have questions or want to review parts of it again, you will be able to do that. The next question is, during the Q&A period, is it accurate? Is it accurate that I am able to ask who is currently doing the services and how much they're charging? Yes.
So in the solicitation, while it is out for bid, there's always a Q&A period. So it'll be questions will be received till this date and time, and then the state will provide the answers at this date. So we collect all those questions, and one of the questions you can ask is who is currently doing these services, and then how much are you currently paying for that contract. Just know that whatever was in the current contract could be changed slightly as far as scope or whatnot in this one that's posted. So you can ask, absolutely, price is never confidential. You can say, how much are you currently paying for that, for these services? Just keep in the back of your mind that when we go to repost this, we could be changing the scope slightly. So which could affect what we're paying now and what we'd be paying in the future.
Okay, Meredith, it looks like that's all the questions that we have
all
for
right.
now.
We'll push through. Yep. All right. All right, so we've gone through the bid process. You've submitted your bid. It was risen to the top, and now you've been awarded. So what happens next? We're going to talk about that once you get that contract award, you will be notified by the agency purchasing office, usually with a certification of award memo that kind of just outlines, this is how much we'll be paying, these are the terms of the contract, some kind of memo that outlines these are the dates, things like that. It will also be posted out on NC EVP. So it is out there for the world to see who won that contract. It is usually posted within 3 days of that final award. So when you submitted that bid, just know that it might have had to go through some approvals. And when you're submitting those bids, if you have any question during that bid process, reach out directly to the agency that posted that bid. And then that way they can tell you kind of where they are in those approval processes. But once you have been awarded, that means that we've gone through all those approvals and we're ready to award and ready to kick off that contract. So it's posted out on EVP. Those tabulations are then updated with all the pricing from all the vendors for everybody to see. The awarded vendor will also receive a finalized, executed copy of the contract, which includes the actual bid that you submitted along with the RFP that you submitted. So all of that becomes then your contract. We issue those purchase orders through eProcurement. So those then are issued electronically to whoever's registered in EVP that then you can start billing against. So what makes up those contract documents? It is the fully executed. So when you submitted your bid, it asks or submitted that RFQ whenever we're under contract, it had a signature from the vendor, and then if awarded, the agency countersigns, becoming then the contract. So it includes the IFB, RFP, RFQ, whatever document was posted and solicited, that document, as well as the terms and conditions to doing business with the state, which is a link usually in that document. The addendums that were posted, so if we got questions and answers and all of that in writing, we posted that on an addendum. And so any addendums during the bid process also is included in the contract. Your proposal that came back that included your technical approach of how you're going to do it, your vendor experience, the staffing plan of who's doing the work, all of that's included. The best and final offers. So we could have gotten into negotiations during the evaluation process. We confirm those on a document called a BAFO, or a best and final offer document that everybody signs. So we agree to those negotiations. We could have sent you something called a request for clarification during our evaluation. So we got something back in your proposal we didn't understand. We just want to clarify it. That then is agreed upon. So that becomes part of the contract. That certification of award memo that I mentioned that kind of just outlines the bare basics of the contract. These are the dates. This is how much money it is. These are the people involved in it, those types of things. Any amendments, so amendments or changes during the life of the contract. Any renewals, so when we talk about a contract term, know that the standard term is 3 years, but we could have optional renewals. So the state could opt to use one of those renewals and do that through a memo or an amendment. So that becomes part of the contract. And then those purchase orders that are issued against the contract. So all of these different documents become your contract, and that is what you're held to as far as performance and meeting expectations, meeting the scope of work. All of that is included in those documents. So we talk about the purchase orders that are issued out of e-procurement. Just be on the lookout because they have some information in them too, including the description of line items or service. Know that it could have multiple line items. So something like, I don't know, we do fire alarm inspections, right? So we could have a line item for every building that's on that contract. And as we complete those inspections, we would close out that line associated to, you could bill against that line, and then the bill is then taken off that purchase order for that particular line for that building. So it gives us the ability to line item things, and then we can receive them as we get that service or those goods. It could include the bid number, the contract number for your records, accounting codes, those commodity codes that are associated, including where you made shipping a service and outside of the goods. Pricing is verified on the purchase order. Delivery schedule. So it allows us to put in comments to the vendor. So there we could say, hey, we don't have a loading dock, things like that. So the delivery information could be on the purchase order as well as the schedule. Payment terms. So know that the state pays net 30. So we do not pay for anything up front. Everything is paid net 30 from the approval of an invoice. The effective dates of the contract, including those renewals, transportation, freight. As I said, always make that a separate line item. Terms and conditions that you agreed to, we could upload all of those contract documents into that purchase order that's then sent to you electronically. And then it also, like I said, we can put comments that could include, now you've talked through your whole bid process, you talk to purchasing people. And now you can talk to the contract manager that actually is doing those fire alarm inspections with you. So his information and contact information could be included on the purchase orders. Always bill whoever the bill to address is on the purchase order. So you've talked to purchasing, but if you don't bill purchasing, you would bill the guy that does the inspections for facilities. It's always a good idea that once you have that contract to have a kickoff meeting. If the state hasn't reached out to you after award, if that guy that's doing the inspections that's working for facilities hasn't reached out to you, reach out to them. His information was on the certification of award information as well as on the purchase order. Reach out to him and set up a kickoff meeting to make sure that that contract works the way that everybody wants it to work. Identify your roles and responsibilities. Maybe a salesperson was the one that submitted the bid, but then you have actual technicians that are going to do the work. So identify and give contact information for each team member that's going to work under that contract. Clarify your terms and conditions, the established goals and objectives, but also think about, is there any work that has to be done before the actual work can start? Do you have to get badged to have access to our buildings? Do you have to order supplies? Do you have to complete background checks? Things like that have to happen before the actual work happens. Make sure that you build that into your timeline. Know what's in your scope of work, because that is what you'll be held liable to in performance-based measures. So know what's in the scope of work or specifications of those products that you're providing. Know what's in the terms and conditions. Complete any pre-contract. So if you have to do those background checks, badging, manuals, user access to our systems, if you have to secure staffing or equipment or product or whatever it is, just make sure that you complete that checklist so that you're ready to go by the official date. Confirm the deliverables. So any reporting requirements, maybe during that kickoff meeting, how do they need to receive that report? Where does that report need to go? Deliverable times and instructions. If you're dropping off hundreds of thousands of tons of equipment and they don't have a loading dock, and now you have to know you have to have a lift. Just get that all squared away during that kickoff meeting so that you know what's expected of you in that scope of work, and know what the tasks are and when they have to be completed, and how do you prove that then they're completed in your documentation.
Hey, Meredith, we do have one question. They're asking, what are your insurance coverage requirements for vendors?
So it depends on the contract amount, the value of the contract. It is listed in our terms and conditions. We have basically a tiered approach. So the insurance requirements for one of those purchases under small purchase threshold, so under that $29,000, is different than 29 up to $1 million, and then it gets even higher for contracts estimated to be over $1 million. So those are our tiers for different insurance, and like I said, they're in the terms and conditions of all of our contracts. They are, the terms and conditions link is on Statewide Purchase and Contracts website, which I'll give you, I believe it's at the back of this presentation. So with that website, you can go to vendor forms, and one of the first forms you see is our terms and conditions, our standard terms and conditions, and the insurance requirements are in there. Yep.
I'm sorry. We have another question. Is drug testing a pre-contract requirement? Are you there?
Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. Is drug testing a pre-contract requirement? And is the vendor responsible for the background checks, or is it through the state?
So it will be listed in that solicitation document if it is a requirement. Not all of our services require a background check. It's up to that particular project on if they make that a requirement. That includes drug testing as well as background checks. If it is a requirement on the normal, I'm not saying this is always, but on the normal, that expense for background checks is on the vendor. So the vendor is required to, if they are required to do drug testing or background check, the normal way that that is done in the document is that it's on the vendor to pay for those and submit them to the state before any work can start. But that's not always a requirement. If it is a requirement, it will be listed in the solicitation document during the bid process. So you would know that you would have that expense up front if awarded. Yeah. All right. So getting into contract monitoring, just some tips on that. It's always a good idea to set up an internal contract management plan once you've been awarded the contract. Know that we're keeping documentation throughout the life of the contract. It's probably a good idea for you to keep all that documentation. So once you had that kickoff meeting, set up a client profile so that you have all of that in one spot, where you have those roles identified, the responsibilities, any checklists, set those up for those deliverables. Document your start and end dates so that you know when your contract is ending or is coming up for renewal. Define, if you have a subcontractor that's under a state contract, know that the state is only contracting with the prime. We do not get involved in the relationship between the prime and the subcontractor. So it's up to the prime to set up maybe a contract with the subcontractor, or if you're a subcontractor, it's always a good idea that you have something in writing with the prime. If there's ever a question on paying a subcontractor, we don't get involved in that relationship. So it's always a good idea to have your own paperwork and your own contract between the sub and the prime and define those roles and responsibilities. One other little tip that I will tell you is if you are planning on using a subcontractor when you are submitting your bid, and if they're doing a piece of that service and we ask for vendor experience, make sure you provide that subcontractor's experience too. So if you just say, well, I'm going to subcontract that out and we don't know their experience, we can't evaluate if that meets our need or not. So just a tip is that when you're submitting a bid, if you're planning on using a subcontractor, include their information in your evaluation criteria. Notify the contract manager or the administrator of any issues, changes to scope of work, and make sure you try to do it in a timely manner. We know that accidents happen, changes happen, different world events can happen. But just know that if anything changes in that contract, it has to be documented in order to make that change. So just be mindful that you notify your contract manager of any changes so that we can make sure and follow our processes to amend the contract as needed. And monitor throughout the life of the project. So if you have a 3-year contract, just at award, don't be done with it. Monitor it throughout to make sure that you're meeting those goals and objectives, because we'll be monitoring throughout too. We want to make sure it took a lot to get that contract together and put together. We want to make sure that it's great for everyone that's involved with that contract. So what should be in your filing? Make sure to have all those contract documents. So the ones that we had in the slide before, keep all of those documents. Maybe if you set up your own plan, keep that as part of your file. Communications back and forth. If it's written down, it's going into our file. So if we're sending emails back and forth just about a certain contract, keep those emails so that you have documentation. Well, I sent you the email and I never heard back from you, because that's what we'll be doing to make sure that is a documented record that becomes part of that contract. Any reports, so if you're submitting a report and for some reason it doesn't meet or we never got it or whatnot, make sure you keep the report, shipping documents, invoices, receipts, all the billing information, performance reviews. So if there are performance reviews or inspections or testing of some equipment and you receive that from us, make sure you keep that so you have record of it with that. Contract modification. So if we do amendments and we actually change the term of the contract, make sure you keep that within your file too. And then it's always a good idea if we are giving you access or giving you badges, if we're giving you some kind of state property, that you keep a list of who has that badge, who has that access to that system, who has all of that, so that contract closeout, you can pull all that really quickly and be able to give it back. But if you have a list of where it all is, keep track, because if you don't return it at the end of closeout, you could be charged for some of that furnished equipment. Just know that nothing's constant in procurement except for change. So there's always things that are changing within a contract. Any renewals are usually done on either a memo form or on an amendment form to exercise those renewals. Renewals are written in with the term of the contract. So if we have the state can contract up to 3 years. If we're going over that 3 years, we get additional approvals. But when we go to exercise an optional renewal, it's built into the initial term that we had approved. And then those renewals are up to the state to exercise first. So there could be many reasons why we don't. It could be we don't need this anymore. We don't have any more money. There could be multiple reasons as to why we don't exercise. But if we do, it is sent to the vendor that, yes, we want to exercise that renewal. We'll do that before the current term ends. And then you sign it and say, yes, we agree to extend and exercise that renewal. You may get a new purchase order for every year of the contract. So just be mindful when you're submitting your invoice that you're using the correct purchase order to make sure that we're not messing up payment somehow. So when we issue a purchase order, we're encumbering those dollars with that purchase order to then be able to be released per invoice. So just make sure if you get a new purchase order for the next year of the contract, and then you start invoicing with that number attached. Amendments can be used to change anything. So not just exercising those renewals, but maybe we need to go beyond what the initial term was. We need an extension. So we would amend to extend. We could amend to change rates. Maybe we had a landscaping bid and now we want you to take care of the ant problem. So we need to amend to add scope to take care of our ants. So it's used to change anything. Make sure if the landscaping guy says, yeah, just bill me for the ants, you say, no, I need to get it in writing. We need to actually amend the contract to make sure that when I submit my bill, it's all part of that contract. So know that only the purchasing office can change the terms of an actual contract. So we are the contract administrators on the back end. Your contract manager is the landscaper that is managing the contract, but we are the administrators that administer the documents for the contract. I'm gonna stop there. Any questions on managing the contract? All right, I'm gonna keep on keeping on. The last section we're gonna get into is contract performance. So once you have that contract, just know that inspections are conducted according to that scope of work. So that's what you agreed upon. That's what we've agreed upon. That's what you will be held liable to. That could include some testing requirements. It would be listed in that specification to just know that if we have to have a piece of equipment up and running, the deliverable is not completed until the installation is complete of that and it's clean and ready to use. You've gotten all the debris away, then you can invoice. Services are inspected by our contract manager. So the landscaper is doing the inspections of the work. If he has a problem, he then comes to the contracting administrative office, the purchasing office to make any changes to the contract. Invoices will not be paid by that contract administrator until he ensures that he's either gotten those goods or he has reviewed and accepted the inspection of the services. So another good key point is make sure that you stay in good communication and documenting all of that communication. So notify us. We'll notify you if something never comes. Notify us if it's inaccurate or whatnot. If it's not something, we can mark that in e-procurement and reject those goods that then could take it off the purchase order. Vendors, just make sure that you notify us if you have something back ordered that's not going to meet that delivery schedule, if you had something that was discontinued, or for some reason you can't meet the requirement that's in your contract. If you're requesting change orders or amendments, just make sure that you provide a quote with that change so that we know how much it's going to cost us and what the terms are of that change. Document all communications. Like I said, if it's over email or over phone call, make your notes and keep it with your contract file so that we know that it happened. If it's not written down at the state, it didn't happen for us. So we are the document people and we document everything. If you ever get a vendor complaint, it's up to our managers, our contract managers, to really be the ones that are on the ground performing and monitoring the contract. So they do they're our first line of defense to fix any problems that they have with that particular contract. They will notify you via phone, via email, or whatnot if they do have a problem, and we try to work directly with the manager. You'll only be held liable for what's written in the contract. And the vendor is always given the opportunity to fix any problems. So we make sure that our contract administrator manager says, hey, this is what a problem that we're having. This is what we want to do to fix it. Can you fix it by doing X, Y, Z? If they get to a point where the contract manager can't get the problem resolved, they could come to the purchasing office to issue what we call a formal vendor complaint. So that's where you've been found in breach of contract. It lays out in that complaint, this is what your contract says, this is the complaint we're having, we're now finding you in breach here. Also, here's how you can fix it. There are dates to fix it. There are dates to respond to that formal vendor complaint. Just make sure that if you get something like that, you read it thoroughly and respond. There could be consequences to not responding. You could also request a meeting and say, no, I don't agree with this. Can we sit down and all get together and make sure that this is operating the way that it should? Therefore, we could, if we do find you in breach, we do have tools where we could withhold payment or other remedies before we try to terminate. Payment terms. So like I said, the state pays net 30. We do not pay for goods and services before they are received. You can only bill according to what's in your purchase order. So that's where it's very important in those line items that it matches up so that our accounting department, when we're going to pay an invoice, it matches the purchase order. They know which line to pay against. So make sure your invoice matches your current purchase order. All payments to the vendor are subject to availability of funds. That's in our standard terms and conditions. Just know that if we've issued a purchase order for something, we have encumbered those funds. Therefore, yes, you can exercise whatever it is. The state does not agree to pay costs for any interest, late fees, or attorney fees. That's in our standard terms and conditions. We do have the capability to issue electronic funds transfers. That is done through our Office of State Comptroller, and that's part of our accounting system. This is the link to be able to set up for that and make sure that you can get the electronic EFT transfer of those funds for payment. In your invoicing, I said this earlier, but just make sure that you're using the bill to address that's on your purchase order. That's who you should be billing. Make sure that your invoice includes what work you've done. If there was a report that had to be due, that it's included in that. The purchase order, the correct purchase order, the contract number, anything to be able to associate that invoice with the correct contract and the correct purchase order. Ensure that your remit to address that you have registered in EVP is correct. and that those email addresses are correct. That's however you register an EVP is going to drive everything. Getting paid, getting notices to bid, all of it is all linked together. So if your addresses and email addresses and all of that is not correct, you potentially are missing out on opportunities, and it can hold up your payment. Make sure that your remit to address in your registration matches what your vendor tax ID address is. Our new system, we have a new accounting system, and it has trip ups if your remit to address doesn't match how you're registered for your EIN number. So be aware of that. On the back end, you've now had this contract for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is, and now we're towards the end. Just ensure that all your deliverables are met. Return that state issued equipment, those badges, things like that. If you have to get access to those state reported systems, make sure that you remove that access to our systems. Ensure that we fixed any problems with that contract. Comply with our record retention. So we at purchasing within the state, we hold our procurement files 5 years after expiration of the contract. We're not saying that that's a requirement, but it's probably a good idea if you had to ever come back to those documents. That's how long we are keeping our documents. Make sure that there's acceptance of that project manager's or that contract manager's final sign off on that everything has been met, and then you can submit your final invoicing. If you have anything that's ongoing with that contract, let's say you've done this piece and now you have to do this next piece, or if you need an extension to be able to complete those tasks, those deliverables, just before it ends, make sure you reach out to your contract manager and say, hey, I need a little more time. Can we do an extension on this contract? So once it's over and that contract date is done, the contract's done and we can't amend it. So if you need to do something that needs to go beyond the contract term, or if you have additional services that need to be done, just know that we need to set that amendment up before the end of the contract term. Any questions? We do have one for hub certification. What if you do not have all the forms? Can you submit what you have? Carla, can you take yourself off mute?
Okay, so that question was, what if you do not have all the forms? Can you submit what you have? And the answer is, if you encounter something that we are asking for, we do ask that you give us an explanation as to why you're not providing it, and upload the explanation where you would upload the form. So I hope that answers your question.
I think that addressed it.
Okay.
And we did have a question, Carl, I'll let you address this too, about did we miss the segment regarding becoming a certified minority-owned business? So go ahead, Carla.
Yeah, Meredith touched on that at the very beginning, and I'm willing to put my contact information in the chat if there are further questions as to how to become certified.
And so the certification happens, your first stop is also on EVP. That's where I talked about it. So on that EVP website is the information that you would then be uploading to get hub certified.
And we also had a question about somebody that was forwarded the invitation from a colleague, and which email will the presentation and be sent to. It's probably going to be sent to your colleague, and then they can share it from there. Or if you would like, you can email us at communications@doa.nc.gov, and we can add you to that list as well. Okay, and in case you didn't see it, if you have questions regarding the hub certification, you can reach out to Carla Copes, that's carla.copes@doa.nc.gov. And Michael says, thank you for walking us through the process. Great event.